Every paycheck, 6.2% comes out before you see a dollar. That money goes to Social Security. The government's own trustees released a report saying that by the end of 2032, the fund that collects it runs out of reserves. When that happens, 70 million Americans take an automatic cut of around $460 a month. The question is how a program this size got to this point, and whether Congress can be made to care before the clock runs out. Let's start with the mechanism, because the way most people picture Social Security isn't quite right. The money paid in doesn't sit in a fund waiting to be returned. What workers pay today funds current retirees' benefits. The workers behind them will fund theirs. That's been the design since 1935. A pay-as-you-go system where each generation covers the one ahead of it. For most of the program's history, the math worked. In 1960, there were 5.1 workers paying in for every person collecting benefits. The system ran surpluses, and those surpluses accumulated in a trust fund, a reserve built specifically for the moment when that ratio would shrink. That moment arrived. The ratio today is 2.7 workers per beneficiary, and the trustees project it keeps falling. The baby boom generation is the largest cohort in American history, and they're retiring. Birth rates have declined, and the immigration trends that historically helped offset that are tightening. The reserve was sized for a smaller, shorter version of what's actually happening. The gap between payroll tax revenue and benefit payments is why insolvency is more precise than it sounds alarming. Insolvency here doesn't mean the checks stop going out. Social Security will still collect payroll taxes after 2032, and it will still send monthly payments to retirees. The issue is that the payroll taxes coming in won't cover the full amount currently scheduled to go out. According to the trustees' report, the shortfall lands at exactly 22%. The average retired worker currently receives about $2,081 a month. A 22% cut removes roughly $457 from that. For a household whose rent, groceries, and prescriptions are built around that $2,081, that's not an abstraction. There's a secondary figure in the report that doesn't get much attention. If the retirement fund and the disability fund are counted together, the combined depletion date moves to 2034, with a 17% cut instead of 22%. Different analyses use one figure or the other, which is why the numbers in different articles appear to contradict each other. They're describing different scenarios. The retirement-only fund hits first, in 2032. The combined picture holds 2 years longer. Neither changes what's actually required to prevent the cut. And that's where the political difficulty starts. What's required is what Congress has avoided for 43 years. The last time lawmakers made major structural changes to Social Security was 1983, when a bipartisan deal raised the payroll tax rate, gradually pushed the retirement age from 65 to 67, and brought some benefit income under federal taxes. It was projected at the time to keep the trust fund solvent for 75 years. Demographic and economic shifts have shortened that runway considerably. The options available now are roughly what they've always been. Raise the payroll tax rate, raise or eliminate the cap on earnings subject to that tax, currently set at $184,500, meaning every dollar earned above that amount is exempt from Social Security payroll taxes. In 1983, that cap covered 90% of all wages in the economy. Today, it covers about 83% because wages at the top have grown faster than the cap has been adjusted. Adjust the benefit formula, raise the retirement age, some combination of all of them. The Social Security Administration's own actuaries have modeled these scenarios in detail. The math closes. It just requires someone to pay more or receive less, or both. The political problem is that both parties have made the same electoral promise in opposite directions. Democrats have committed to protecting benefits for current retirees. Republicans have committed to not raising taxes. Any fix requires one or the other or both, which means any serious proposal becomes an immediate liability in an election year. The senators elected this November will be in office when the trust fund runs out. The ones elected in 2028 will be too. That's not a distant abstraction. It's a calendar problem. Something else happened recently that made the calendar tighter. Legislation passed last year, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, included a provision reducing how Social Security benefit income is taxed. The intent was to give retirees more take-home pay. The effect, according to the SSA trustees, was to pull roughly $169 billion out of the trust fund over 10 years and move the depletion date 1 quarter earlier than projected last year. The window narrowed while the political difficulty of fixing it stayed the same. What a real fix looks like depends on who absorbs the cost. Raising the payroll tax cap back to 90% of wages, where it stood in 1983, would close roughly 20% of the long-range shortfall on its own, according to the SSA's chief actuary. Eliminating the cap entirely and applying payroll taxes to all wages while keeping the current benefit ceiling would extend solvency by about 35 years. Neither is a complete solution by itself. A durable fix almost certainly requires both revenue and benefit adjustments, phased in over enough time for workers and retirees to plan around them. That's what 1983 did. The benefit cuts in that deal were phased in over 40 years. The program keeps more Americans out of poverty than any other single policy in the country. The actuarial data exists. The policy options are documented. The SSA's own actuaries can model the cost of any given change through the year. The missing piece has never been technical. It's a political system that makes doing nothing feel safer than doing something, right up until the clock runs out.